Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on this webcast live from COP21 in Paris, France. My name is Megan and I am the programs coordinator at Climate Generation, a Will Steger Legacy. And we are a nonprofit in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And our mission is to educate and empower people to engage in solutions to climate change. And so we recognize that teachers and educators are critical messengers of climate and energy literacy to hundreds of students each year, just like you guys in West St. Paul and Mendota Heights. And so we are leading a group of 10 education ambassadors in our Window into Paris program at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 21st Conference of the Parties in Paris, France, so COP21. And that's what Ms. Otte is at this week. So these teachers are engaging in the international climate negotiations as both learners and communicators back to their classrooms and communities. And they represent diverse subject areas and grade levels and educational settings from around the entire country. And the negotiations this year will for the first time in over 20 years, aim to achieve a legally binding and universal agreement on climate with the aim of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. So today we have Dr. Otte with us live from Paris, and we also have her classroom back in Minnesota joining us as well. So please feel free to join in the conversation. We'll have Dr. Otte give us a little rundown of what she's been up to, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A from her students. So I will turn it over to Ms. Otte right now.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ms. Otte.
It's actually Mr. Dowd's classroom, but he was gracious enough to let me work with you all on this really important endeavor. I guess what I'd like to do is just start with a quick little photo session so that you can get an idea of my surroundings and where I am. I know I don't have the Eiffel Tower behind me, but I do have a croissant sitting next to me, so that's pretty good. Let me try to find how to do this now. I'm going to do a photo share with you real quick. It's not working now. Do you see me or photos?
We saw the photos briefly.
Go back to click on the photo. Where you? Yep.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So is it full screen now?
I'm loading.
Is it full? Okay. All right, so here you can see right on the Eiffel Tower they have the climate sign right there, really obvious. So yeah, I'm in Paris. I'm at COP21, the 21st time that this has happened, and it happens at cities all over the world. This is our group right here, and I'm kind of in the back there, and we all have these fancy red jackets so you can spot us anywhere in Paris. And when we first got to the session here at the United Nations site where it's being held, some men with guns came up to us because they thought maybe we were kind of a sketchy group with our red jackets on, but we proved them wrong, and we're very nice people, all of us teachers. But right in this entryway, there are these pillars with all of the nations represented with their flag. All of these nations are represented here at, and have world leaders coming here to discuss this. This is just the inside of where I was. They have a lot of little different stages and auditoriums and things like that. They have stands set up for all kinds of different places, some renewable energy stuff, oceanography stuff, the WWF is there, Sierra Club, just a number of things. I can't even list them all. Right outside of the entryway, they have there's renewable energy ideas all over the place, and this sculpture helps with the electricity inside of the building. So they're like little windmills. As you probably know, last week Obama was here, and he spoke at the beginning. Yesterday, Al Gore, former vice president, was here, and he gave a really long talk. Now, he's famous for a lot of his work in climate change, and he has the famous movie An Inconvenient Truth, and that was done quite a few years back. I think it was 2009, but since then he has done a lot of work in this area. I ended up circulating around to try to find answers to all of your questions. A lot of you had really great ideas. A lot of you had a lot of good questions, and I kind of made it my job to document those ideas and those questions and try to kind of get some resources so that I can reach back to you with those, get back to you with those either via this webinar or an email with these resources to your teachers, or I have some things in the blog I'm writing, things like that. Many of you talked about animals, and so I definitely had to stop at the WWF booth, the World Wildlife Federation. And these two women are actually on bicycles that can then to power energy. And I talked to the WWF people a lot about animals and stuff, and they kind of directed me to some of their resources in their website to have for teaching tools for all of you. Right, there are sites all over Paris, not just the main site, and there's actually some art installations around Paris too. And this is part of a glacier from Greenland. And do you remember how many tons, trillion, how much weight? I don't remember how much weight it was, but these were huge ice. It's from a real glacier in Greenland. It was set outside of the Pantheon in Paris, a really famous historical building. So it's 80 tons of ice sitting in a circle outside of the Pantheon. And right now in Paris, it's in the 50s. So these are melting, and it's sort of an artistic display of what's happening in our Arctic areas.
Oh, here we go. I think we're on it. We're on.
Oh, I think we have another school that just joined.
Hi, Miss Otte.
Welcome, Garlo. We're kind of halfway through a photo session here, but we'll just keep going, and
okay.
Everyone have some questions if you can, if you want to just listen for now.
Okay.
So this sculpture was pretty powerful. A lot of people were standing and looking at this, and just you could kind of see that people were pretty moved by this scene. At COP, it was pretty interesting to see. There were some sort of activist kind of people, but they had to have really special permission to do this. They wouldn't allow any kind of protesters or anything like that. But it was pretty interesting. You can see this sign says, "What are we going to do about the United States?" And I can tell you that my feeling since I've been here has been, it's been one of where it feels like there's sort of a disconnect, because here at the United Nations meeting on this, it feels like the the world cares about this, and there are people really invested in solutions, and there are people who really want to make changes to reach some solutions here. But there does seem to be a disconnect when I think about even coming from the United States and what I hear on the news about that. And yesterday I wrote about this in my blog if you want to read more about that. But it has been pretty interesting. So that's been sort of a difficult thing. But I do have a message to you in my blog from yesterday, and that's that you just keep working, you just keep trying, to help people learn and understand, and that's how you can make a change. All right, so I'm going to go back out. Oh, there's another class.
That's us.
There, I can see you now.
Yes.
Can you see me now, or can you see pictures?
We can see us.
Go ahead and click on the Hangout, Kristy. It should make you bigger.
Okay, can you see me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I have Heritage and Garlow here. Okay. Okay, so I have really important news from today, and today, you know, all of those statements that you made on the piece of paper, and you wrote out your message about, like, I care about, you did all of that work. And at Heritage, you wrote out your statement, your position statement, like, I want an international agreement on climate because, and then you filled in the blanks. Well, that was made into a video in YouTube. And that video today was delivered to the science advisor for President Obama. So I can kind of tell you how that went a little bit. I went to the U.S. Embassy, and security is really tight at the U.S. Embassy. You have to go through a lot of detectors, and they search your bags and all that business. But anyway, we got through finally, and we met with John Holdren, who, like I said, is Obama's science advisor. So I'm going to tell you a little bit what I told him, and I was trying to really summarize what I heard from all of you and make it be heard. And I had about a minute to talk, so I tried really hard to just summarize and be concise. But I gave my introduction, and I did tell him that I worked with students from 5 schools, and grades 8, grades 3, grades 4 were all included in that. I mentioned that one of the schools is a E-STEM school, Heritage, and I mentioned that the other school, one of them is an environmental school. And I talked about, I said, in your statements, it was really common to hear you say that you care about different animals, and you care about the quality of water. You're worried about water in your own state, and you're worried about water even for people around the world. I also heard from you that you'd like to see a decrease in the use of fossil fuels. And the 2 questions that I thought were really important that I asked, that I heard from you, were why doesn't anyone care, and why don't they do anything? So in other words, I heard that frustration from you, like, why doesn't anyone do anything about this? And I can tell you right now that the answer that came from John Holdren, and this is, you can quote this. He said, President Obama cares, and he is doing something. Okay? So you can know that in your hearts, what you just did, you know, with your statements, that's really powerful, and it's going to go to Obama. So we got the closest we could to the president to be able to deliver this statement. Okay. I did read a few of the statements. I gave him the link so he can see all of them, but I did read a few of them. And the ones that I read, multiple students had these kinds of statements, like, I care about Minnesota lakes. I care about the air I breathe. I care about animals. Please protect them. And someone needs to listen and make a change. So each teacher had the chance to go around and deliver this message to him, and he was very receptive and seemed like our messages are going directly to the White House. They're going right to the White House and being considered, and he reassured us that he was a receptive audience and that we're really, what you have to say matters. So that was really good to hear. So does anyone have any questions?
Miss Otte, I know some of the kids here at Garlow have had some questions prepared to ask you, and they may have been answered in the beginning when you were doing your video, so sorry.
Okay.
Does someone have a question? Julian?
Like, what are the most major changes?
What are the, are you speaking, like, what are the major changes in what is decided, or what are the major changes to our climate?
What is decided?
To the climate?
What's decided?
Oh, okay, so, you know, that's a really good question, because they think that, John Holdren even said that this time that they're meeting is really different from other times that we're meeting. A positive outlook is more likely from this meeting than previous ones, so it's likely that there will be an agreement, okay? I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Another question, Savannah?
What kind of problems are you talking about? Like,
okay, so do you mean climate change problems?
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, you know, today we did talk about temperature changes and what that can do, how that can affect human health, how it can affect natural systems, how it can affect extreme weather patterns, how it can, you know, result in increased forest fires or pest outbreaks where we lose a bunch of trees, things like that. Mm-hmm.
Miss Otte, question from Heritage.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
We'll kind of come up to the...
What do you think would help the environment the most with this climate change?
What would help the environment the most? That is a really great question. You know, they keep throwing around this 2 degrees Celsius number, and we know that if they come to an agreement around you know, keeping the temperature beneath 2 degrees, that it still means big changes for us. It still means we see what's happening now with extreme weather situations, and I think that a lot of people would like it to be a lot less than 2 degrees. I think people would like to see it be 1.5 degrees or even less than that. But when you're trying to get 180 some nations to agree on something, it gets difficult. It's very complex. Any more questions?
Heritage, somebody else? Jesse? We have one more at Heritage, and then Garlow may have a couple more.
Okay.
Jessica.
I wanted to know what the biggest problem with climate change is that could eventually add up in the future.
Well, you know, that is such a huge question because it includes so many things and it's so complex. And like I said in the other answer, with an increased global temperature, you're going to see changes in our habit, you know, in how we live. We're going to see changes in animal habitats, animal species. We're going to see changes in temperature, and we might experience some different health concerns. We might experience the loss of things that we hold dear to us, like certain scenic places or animals we love or things like that. There's a lot at risk.
Miss Otte, why don't you go back to Garlo? I think they have a couple more questions, and
Okay.
then we might have one or two more heritage as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple questions.
Okay.
What did you guys mostly talk about at
You know, that's a good question because, you know, a lot of teachers, we go to all these big meetings and things, and I can tell you this is nothing like even the biggest meeting I've ever been to. This is like 20 of those put together. There's almost so much going on that it's overwhelming, and there are things going on all over the place. I went to one really interesting meeting the first full day I was here, and that meeting had to do with indigenous rights. And there were a lot of representatives of people from island nations. There was one from the Marshall Islands. There was one from Papua New Guinea. And then in Indonesia, there was also someone from an island there. And those people are experiencing major effects of climate change right now living in an island in the ocean. They face more severe risks just on a daily basis right now than we can imagine in Minnesota. Major flooding, loss of fresh water. Once things do flood, then their wells can become contaminated, and then they don't have fresh drinking water. Some of the nations most at risk are also our poorest countries that we have in the world, and so resources are just really, really difficult for some people. So that was really interesting to see and learn about.
Thank you. Another question?
Why is this meeting so important?
I couldn't hear your question. Why is what so important?
Why is this meeting so important?
Why is this meeting so important? Well, let me tell you. Okay. So when I talked to John Holdren today, if we make an agreement now that has that 2 degree Celsius idea in it, we're going to have to adapt as humans, and we're going to have to also work really hard to keep the temperature beneath that. If we do nothing, in the next 100 years, we could see a temperature increase of 8 to 12 degrees. And what that looks like is more wildfires, more drought, more scarcity in water resources, people who suffer more from heat-related illnesses. It's pretty serious. It's pretty dire situation. So it sounds like there will be an agreement, though. I can't guarantee it because I'm not in the United Nations, but it sounds like they're really going to have a positive outcome around this 2 degree mark at least. Any more questions?
Heritage, I think we have one more, Ms. Otte.
Okay.
Dr. Brett, you want
Why is there climate change?
Well, I guess we could say there is climate change for natural reasons. We've already established that. You learn about that in science and things like that. But then there's the more severe climate change that we see as a result of human actions. And many of you learned about this already, and we talked about this, but when we use fossil fuels like coal, gas, oil, we're heating up the earth at a rate that is not natural, and that becomes a real problem because an increased temperature leads to a whole bunch of other problems. We've talked about that in our lessons, but there's so much to talk about and learn about. Any other questions?
Anyone else at Heritage? Donovan, do you have one? One more, I think, Mrs.
Okay.
How long do you think that this conference will last for?
You know, it is supposed to end on Saturday, but I have heard that sometimes these meetings go a little bit longer. So I hope that you all watch the news and you keep track of what's happening, because it would be really awesome if we could have an agreement and we could see some real changes in our own country if we do that. Anyone else from Garlow?
Yes, we have a couple more questions, but
Okay.
we're kind of going in and out. Our connection isn't that good.
Okay.
Okay. A couple more questions.
How does climate change affect our Earth?
How does climate change affect Earth?
Yeah.
Well, you know, like I explained, it kind of is. It affects Earth in a lot of different ways. It affects our atmosphere. It affects the temperature of our oceans. It affects how we live as people. It affects animals. It affects everything. Okay, everything.
Will the world ever be safe again?
Will the world ever be safe again?
The same.
Oh, the same again. You know, I don't know if I can answer that question for you. I think that my lesson for today, even talking with the science advisor for Obama, is that we just keep trying and we just keep working at it and we try to explore and learn as much as we can. And I think that as innovators and engineers and scientists, that all of you will also be able to contribute to solutions in your lifetime.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Otte, for all that information, and for Heritage and Garlow for joining in on the conversation. So let's give her a round of applause, everyone. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining in.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Otte.
Bye, Dr.